People say comprehensible input doesn't work, and if they're basing that opinion on some of the posts that I've seen in r/Dreaming Spanish, then they're entirely right. 2 years ago when I started Dreaming Spanish, there was this prolific, well-known poster who always posted their updates in the sub. I remember reading one of their posts when I was a beginner, and two things jumped out to me. The first thing was that they were consistently putting up 300 minutes every day for a month. The second thing was that they would often listen to comprehensible input while playing video games. As time went on, I started seeing more and more of these types of posts. People speedrunning, doing 400 minutes a day, 500 minutes a day. I think I saw 800 minutes a day. And the more I saw this, the more I realized that there were a lot of people in the Dreaming Spanish community that were treating input in a completely different way than how I treated it. So when I see people complaining about how the Dreaming Spanish method doesn't work, it doesn't shock me at all. When comprehensible input turns into background noise, like something you listen to while you daydream or play Fortnite, then it stops working. What's going on, guys? My name's Nick. I'm the founder of Lengualytics. I'm fluent in Spanish, and I've spent over 1,000 hours of my life listening to Spanish, and a big chunk of that comes from Dreaming Spanish. I said Spanish way too many times in that sentence. Doing comprehensible input is not a passive activity. When you start treating it like something that's happening to you, as opposed to something that you're actively engaged in, then it ends up feeling more like magical nonsense. When I read these posts that say people are averaging 300 minutes a day for months, I know something's off because of my own personal experience. When I first started learning Spanish, I was unemployed. I had nothing else to do in my day necessarily except listen to Spanish. I had time. I also had a strong purpose to communicate with my girlfriend who couldn't speak English. Finally, I've always been an obsessed and disciplined person. I've always loved to work. I'm good at doing hard things. All that to say, I was probably one of the most ideal learners in the most ideal times of their life when I started using Dreaming Spanish. And if I could break 240 minutes a day, counting the time that I would spend talking to my girlfriend, with caveats, that was a good day. I couldn't even manage averaging 240 minutes a day for a month. I could barely manage averaging 180 minutes a day for a month. So when I would see these speedrunning posts, I was always instantly skeptical. Listening to a foreign language for 3 hours a day is not easy. You get tired, you get bored, you can't do it all in one go. I had to break it up throughout the day. Just because you have 12 waking hours in a day doesn't mean you can spend all 12 of those hours doing comprehensible input. Most of us, the vast majority, can barely spend a fraction of those 12 hours listening to comprehensible input. People who speedrun, people who play video games, or even just people who aren't engaging with the content they're watching, they're mistaking exposure for effort. The key insight we have to remember is comprehensible input is not immersion. It's not something you sit in. It's something you actively participate in. It's more like a game of charades. When you're playing a game of charades, someone's in front of you acting something out, and your job is to guess what they're trying to communicate. You're locked in, you're focused on every single hint, every single movement they're doing to try to connect it to something you already know. Do you think you could play a 4-hour game of charades every day for a month? Wouldn't that be tiring? And even that isn't the best comparison, because usually playing a game of charades is much more fun than listening to comprehensible input, especially in the beginner intermediate stage, no matter how compelling the content is. As somebody who became fluent, I'll tell you what comprehensible input that actually works looks like. It looks like sitting down and actually trying to figure out what's being said. It means you're paying attention. You're constantly trying to connect ideas. You notice when you lose the thread and need to bring yourself back. Sometimes you rewind. Sometimes you miss things. Sometimes you get tired and you stop. Because this isn't about stacking hours. This is about how much time your brain is actually engaged with the content you're watching. That's why Stephen Krashen emphasizes so much how important it is to watch compelling input. That's why Pablo on Dreaming Spanish isn't having Agustina reading 90s educational content to you. I only counted my hours when I was reasonably focused. If I was completely zoned out, I just didn't count that as comprehensible input. An hour of comprehensible input means an hour of input you comprehended to some degree. My speedrunning era was actually pretty short. After the first 4 months of input, I never came close to averaging 3 hours a day again. And I'm not saying someone can't do more than I did. Obviously, that's possible. I just know the amount of mental energy it truly takes to be able to keep that pace. From my experience, once you push past a certain point, your level of engagement with the content you're watching naturally just starts to drop. You can't just sit there trying to follow meaning in a foreign language for hours at a time. Most people's brains just don't work like that. Of course, now I can do that because I'm not a beginner anymore, but specifically for beginners and intermediates, this is really difficult. We have to digest the fact that doing comprehensible input is mentally expensive. And for that reason, comprehensible input is hard. Not everyone can do it. People will fail dreaming Spanish. Learning a language is hard. We can't push this fake idea that we've discovered some new method of language learning called comprehensible input that makes language learning easy. Comprehensible input works, but it's still really difficult, and I think part of the reason people have all these stereotypes about comprehensible input learners is because of these crazy posts you see on Reddit where people are like, oh yeah, I do 600 minutes a day, easy. I learned to speak Spanish in 3 months, in 2 months, in 3 days. This is just not how comprehensible input works. So it doesn't surprise me when a YouTuber tries to speedrun the method and fails. It's easy to drift off. It's easy to stop caring. It's easy to think about comprehensible input as simply hours on a clock. I do think hours are the best way to measure fluency, but they're not perfect because every hour of comprehensible input you do has some value of quality attached to it. Was the content you were watching in that hour engaging you? Was the content you were watching in that hour at the right level for you? Were you feeling off that day? These variables affect the efficacy of each hour you listen to comprehensible input content. And in my opinion, this is where most of the variability in outcomes comes from. At the end of the day, the more important question isn't how long did you have Pablo playing in your AirPods. The more important question is, did you care about what you were listening to? And if you look at it that way, you can see the trade-off that speedrunners are making. Maybe they're taking in 300 minutes a day, sure. But how many of those hours, how many of those minutes were they really caring about what they were watching? I guarantee that someone doing a more, realistic pace, like, an hour a day, is going to be able to say, when I was listening, I was engaged. I was very engaged. Of course, those hours for that person are going to be more effective than the hours of a speedrunner if they were just trying to stack hours as opposed to truly engage with what they were watching. So comprehensible input doesn't work when you treat it like something that happens to you as opposed to something you actively participate in. This method isn't about exposure. It's about the process that occurs inside your mind when you're trying to understand a foreign language. And if you're looking for more sweet, compelling, juicy input in your target language, check out my website, Lengualytics, where I host a user-sourced library of all the most high-quality, comprehensible input on the internet. Give this video a like. I'll see you later.